One of the questions I'm often asked is what tools and materials do I use to paint in oil and cold wax? It can be a bit overwhelming when you're first starting out. So in this video, I'm going to share the tools I use and also how to clean them, and the materials and what substrates I paint on. Along the way, I will share tips to help save you money and frustration for when you're first starting out. If you're interested in painting in oil and cold wax, you're in the right place. I'm Karen Pearcey, a New Zealand artist, and let's get started.
Hi, in this video I'm going to show you my favourite tools for working with oil and cold wax. And this is a working studio, so I'm going to actually show you while I'm cleaning them, which is also a useful thing to know. So what I use is baby oil, Johnson's baby oil, to clean my tools. So I just put some on a bit of kitchen towel. Let's stand that over there. And then I'll introduce you to my palette knife, which is a bit messy at the moment. So this palette knife is what I use for mixing oil and cold wax. And I like this shape, which is, it's an RGM size 81, made in Italy. And I just found it the most useful. So I use it for mixing oil and cold wax and also for applying the paint to actual paintings. So I will put that there. Next, I will introduce you to my brayer or roller, depends which part of the world you come from. And I'm just giving this one a bit of a wipe. You can actually use baby wipes as well, but if you've got some stubborn paint, you can use the baby oil. And also you need to sort of make sure you clean off in that gap there. This roller is made by Esstee, which is E-S-S-D-E-E, and it's made specifically for cold wax application. But if you have rollers used in printing or something like that, you would be able to use those. But this has got, you know, the right amount of squidginess for oil and cold wax. And then I just need a little bit more baby oil, and I will show you the squeegees. Now this is the tool, these are the tools I use most in oil and cold wax to actually apply the paint. So I very rarely use brushes. I just use these other tools to apply my paint. So this one is a size 4-inch, and then I've also got the 6-inch. These are actually Messermeister bowl scrapers, so should really be found in your kitchen. But these are the ones I've found the best for applying oil and cold wax. So they've got that silicone edge, that beautiful edge, and then they've also got a metal insert. So they just work really well. So that's that one, and then I have my 6-inch one. I believe you can get other sizes as well, but in New Zealand, the only place I found I can get them is Takapuna Art Supplies. So I order them online. Get them sent down from Auckland. So there we are, an intro to all the tools and how to clean them. In this video I'm going to talk about substrates, what you can actually paint on using oil and cold wax. So first off, I have a relatively inexpensive item, the Daz oil pad. There's also Reeves as well, they're quite inexpensive. This is the paper, and as you can see it has like a texture, like a canvas texture on the paper. However, it's still quite firm paper, it's not like fabric. Some of the oil pads are a bit more fabric like, you know, more canvas like, but you want something with a little bit of firmness. So this one works. So that's one option, and it comes in A4 and A3 size. A more premium paper is Archer's oil paper, and it is 100% pure cotton. And I'll just open it up and show you the texture. It doesn't have a canvas-like texture, it's actually a little bit more like watercolour paper. But The advantage with both these oil papers is they're treated in such a way that there's no need to gesso them first before you use them. You can use them straight away with oil and coal wax, and it doesn't seep through the surface. I do find that the Arches paper probably the oil and coal wax dries a little bit more quickly, and also I tape around the edges so that you get a lovely white line. The tape tends to come off more readily off Arches paper than with the cheaper papers. But when I get to show you how I prepare the papers for painting, I've got some things that will actually help mitigate against that. So that's Arches paper. And then there's wooden panels. So I've got a wooden panel here. They're often, I'll just show you the back, they have a wooden cradle around the sides. The actual facing is often birch, or it could be MDF. So there's a different variety. However, whatever the surface is, you do need to gesso. Minimum of 2 coats, preferably 3. And you can sand in between, but I actually like to create texture, so I don't worry about sanding in between. I like that sort of rough tooth. As you can see, this one's prepared for painting, so I've taped around the sides. I do tend to tape just below where the facing of the panel is, so I let my oil and coal wax just creep over the edge. And then if it's sticking out too thickly, I scrape it back with my palette knife so it has a nice even edge. And then the remainder of the natural wood I just treat with clear wax. So I will just try and show you here's one of my big paintings. I can get it under the camera. And then there's the natural wood, which is treated with coal wax, which provides a nice finish. And if you want to see a bit of that painting, that's my snapperfish that I've been doing, a lovely underwater scene. And that brings me to the end of substrates. I am going to show you all the materials I use in oil and cold wax, and including what I use and also what my students use when I run workshops. So this is cold wax medium that I use, made from Gamblin, and I buy it in the big cans like this, but you can buy smaller containers. What I often do is decant into this very well used tin, which was originally from Gamblin, and this is what cold wax looks like. It looks like, the people in the States often say it looks like Crisco. I think it looks a bit like coconut oil of the fat, and that's what it looks like. So I'll pop that back in there. Another item I use a lot of is baking paper, and this is what I use. I'll just rip a piece off, and that is what I use as my palette. So that's what I mix my oil and coal wax on. And I use it for other things as well, but a good roll of baking paper is what you need. This is optional. There's no need to actually buy this immediately, but there are a few effects that you can do with the odorless mineral spirits, and some of this is contained in the Gamblin cold wax. Again, this is made by Gamblin, and it's odorless mineral spirits. So like terps, but it doesn't smell. So it's optional. You don't need it straight away from when you're starting with oil and coal wax. Then oil paints, of course, this is the brand Pebio that I use for my workshops. It's a student grade brand and is relatively inexpensive for these big tubes. Comes in a good range of colours, and I find it works well in my workshops. And interesting, it's you don't need a lot of paint to start with. In fact, if you got a red, yellow and blue and the white, that will give you enough to start with. So there's no need to go mad buying every colour of paint that you can find. Also interesting to know with Pebio, they have these little squares on the front. Hopefully you can see that. So that little square there. That, if it's white, it means the paint's transparent. If it's half and half, it means it's semi-transparent. And if it's black, it means the paint, like titanium white, is opaque. And it's quite nice to have a mixture of transparent and opaque and semi-opaque colours. Professionally, Gamblin produces a lovely range of oil paints. This is my very well used Gamblin professional paint. They also produce a more student range, which is 1980, and a lot of professional artists use that as well. Safety wise, it's good to use gloves. These are latex gloves because you can get ones that are not latex, but disposable gloves to protect your hands. It saves on cleanup and but also, you know, protects your hands, especially if you're using certain things like pigments and so forth. It's a good idea to protect your hands. So I always have a big box of gloves. Another exciting thing you can use in oil and coal wax are pigments. And this is, I only use very tiny amounts of pigment, and I'll show you in later videos on how to apply them. You can mix them with cold wax pigments and simply use that like a paint, but I also like to do other effects with it. This one is the Pearlex Jacquard powdered pigment, and I buy it in a pack of 12, so you get a lot of different metallic colours. Just wanted to show you this. We talked about Gamsol earlier, and so this is what you can apply Gamsol with. So I have these for my students. They have a little container with the Gamsol and a little dropper, and we use that to apply the Gamsol. The other thing you can use is a spray bottle, which I use. Yes, with the Gamsol. I've already, when I introduced my tools, covered cleaning products. I use the Johnson's baby oil. I also use baby wipes. And the other key material is kitchen towel. I use this to wipe off my squeegees and tools as I'm going, but I love to buy them with having a beautiful pattern, because I use that as a texture tool to imprint as well. So I'm quite fussy about what kitchen towel I buy. I'll show you my box of old rubbish, which is for creating texture. So I have things like tissue paper, crunched up, knitting, also as you can see quite well used with different patterns. Use good old bubble wrap, packaging materials. Here's something else which you could find in your kitchen. Once it's out of your kitchen, do not take it back into your kitchen. But this is a pot stand, and I love to imprint, and it creates a beautiful honeycomb pattern. The other things you can use are leaves from your garden and stems and seed pods, anything interesting you can find. And the other thing you can use is stencils, and also if you have stamps, they're all good for creating texture with oil and cold wax. Another material you'll require is tape, and this I use to tape around the edges of my oil paper when I'm using oil paper as a substrate, so then it produces a lovely clean white edge. So there's lots of different tapes, and I am still trialing them. This is just a standard painter's tape, so that's one option. And I do actually like to have a reasonably thick white edge. So there's different thicknesses. This one is low tack purple tape, which again you can buy from the hardware store. So I've been trying that one. And this one I was recommended by another artist, and it's called frog tape. Again, you can get it from the hardware store. Delicate surface painter's tape, frog tape. I like the packaging. And that's what it looks like. So it's a yellow tape. So I think the yellow tape, this tape's probably my preferred tape at the moment. The issue with tapes is that they can stick to the paper too firmly, and then when you pull them up they can damage the paper. And this is a particular issue, I think more of an issue with the cheaper paper. Artist paper tends to work better. And then I've also got here some washi tape, which is quite fun, but it is quite narrow, which is not what I like so much, not for doing the tapes around in any case. But it's quite nice to have in my studio, and it's got some beautiful patterns with sea life and things, which is what I associate with living on the Cavity Coast.
I hope that's helped you understand the tools and materials I use in my studio and for my workshops. If you're just starting out in oil and coal wax, I've actually put together a beginner's guide and a materials list, which you can download from the link below. If you like this video and would like to find out more about oil and coal wax, please subscribe to my channel. I'm Karen Pearcey, a New Zealand artist, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.